together. We have coworkers. We meet the people in the grocery store every day, or the gas station that you pop in for your water every morning. We do those things, but we truly aren't connected to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We detach.
And we're not connected to ourselves either.
Nope. And we're comfortable in that detachment with ourselves because we don't want to have that connection with ourselves because we don't want to deal.
Yeah.
And we definitely ain't trying to connect with no one else because that fear of being hurt, that fear of letting people in your space and then they're gone. And we've not come to that place where we realize that sometimes that's what life is, though. People have to come and people have to go.
Yeah.
And having a connection with someone just because they're not there doesn't mean that the connection is any less powerful.
Right. And they all serve different purposes in our life, right?
And I think that the better that we can learn those lessons, I think the better off that we can be. But they still escape us hundreds and hundreds of years of evolution. And the things that are most detrimental to our existence still escape us every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
And then we wonder why, if you had to really ask yourself, and everybody had to ask themselves, am I truly content? I'd say 99% of people would say no.
If they're honest.
If they're honest.
Agreed.
If it's you and you, or you and God, or whoever that is to you looking at you, are you being honest? I'd say 99% of people would say no. And then we wonder why. And we wonder what we can do. And we wonder, maybe what we've done wrong, but are we willing to correct the behavior?
And that's the key. If you're listening in, this is Love Jones on Global 99.5. Candy sitting in with you, as well as Alexis. And we're talking about communication, connectivity, and so many other things of why these things are so important. I don't think that we realize the lack of connection to yourself and the detachment from other things within your life, how that comes in collusion with not overall being content. You have this, we talked about that, you have this feeling that there's something missing, there's something wrong. I have a pretty cool car, I live in a pretty itching space.
Yeah.
I have an okay job, I'm pretty cool with that. I'm pretty fashionably dressed. I have so-and-so followers on Instagram, and I've got so many friends on Facebook, and people like my pics every day and all of this stuff. But dang it, it's just, I wake up and there's a void. And I know that it's there. I don't know what the hell to fill it with because I have all of the things that people say you should have in order to be good. So okay, what? And then we continue to try and fill it with things that have the monetary sense. We work harder.
Yeah.
We try to gain more money. We try to connect ourselves with more friends and go to more parties. And it's still there nagging, eating, and you still don't know what to do. You still don't know what to do.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have gotten to that place. I think I talk a lot about yoga because yoga is my life.
Yeah.
And it's the path that I've chosen for myself. And, for anyone listening, yoga is so much more vast than the physical practice that we think of as yoga. I mean, that's 1/8 of one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And it was literally just created to keep the body healthy and prepare it for meditation. So it's a very small part. So when I say yoga is my path, it's a much bigger thing, but it all traces to this source of connection with the true self, which I think is so much why it, resonates with me, because I've always been a seeker, but I always sought outside of myself rather than within myself.
Yes.
So, I talk a lot about yoga. Yoga is not the end all be all. It's whatever works for you. Right. But I would say that any form of spirituality or religion or anything that you subscribe to, the focus has to be on connecting with yourself. It has to be. And it is this kind of lack of connection. I think that we don't even know to want it. It's not really widely talked about or discussed. We don't really know how to get there. And I think that as a result, we're kind of almost walking around like zombies. It's like
everyone's on autopilot.
Yeah, we're on autopilot. And we're like, okay, we're just, and then we have all these existential crises, which I do too. It's like, what happens when you die? And what this, what that. But I mean, okay, what happens when you die? Are you even alive? Are you even living? Right. And most of us aren't, but we walk around our entire lives fearing death. And
when you're already dead, really, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we're maybe experiencing 1% of what we have the capacity to experience. And a few years ago, none of this would have made sense to me, and I would have been sitting there like, "What in the heck is she talking about?"
Right.
So I get it if people's, are
scarf at it a little
yeah,
bit.
Yeah, I get it. But I think that there are a lot of ways to do it. A lot of people, connect when they're in nature. Like you truly feel kind of the different vibrations of, and I don't mean like a physical vibration, although everything has its own vibration, but you kind of come back into contact with yourself or with the world around you. For a lot of people, it's the water. For a lot of people, it's nature. For a lot of people, it's meditation. And I think that the reason that meditation is so effective, and again, I understand that it's become a buzzword, and there's so many types of meditation. I think everyone can kind of find something that resonates with them. But as you begin to sit in stillness and in silence, you realize that the things that you make out in your mind to be so bad aren't bad. You also, most of the time, you also watch your mind think. And as you continue to watch your mind think, I mean, think about how often do you go through your day and you watch your mind think? You don't, right? Like you're just part of your mind and you're swept up in your mind, and your mind is you, and what you think is you, and your personality and your perspective is you, and your emotions are you. And that's just, I'm just an impatient person. I'm just like, a sensitive person. I'm just whatever.
Right.
But we don't ever sit back and watch the mind happen and say, wait, if I can watch my mind think, then who's watching? That is where it's such a hard thing to try to explain, but that is where the source of connection with whatever's behind the mind and all this other stuff that we kind of build up on top of it, that's where it comes in. And that's where we get to know our true nature. And that's where all of the other stuff becomes little by little less important. And we stop placing such emphasis on it. But most of us, either out of fear or I don't have time, I'm too busy, I have a job, I have 2 kids, I have this, I have that, we don't do it. There's not, that I know of, apart from, meditation in its many aspects, being in nature, being around the water, doing yoga, these sorts of things. There's not that many things I can think of that we have in our everyday life that are ever going to connect us to source.
Right.
And so we have to find a way to create that connection. Again, those are a few ways. If you have another way, like for some people, I don't know, maybe it's dance or movement or whatever it is, but like, what is it that gets you back to you? And if you're not, if you're doing it once a week, better than nothing. If you're doing it once a year, okay, maybe better than nothing. But if we're not doing it on a consistent basis, how do we actually expect anything to change?
I get that. And like you said, a lot of times as human beings, we tend to think less of what the benefit is and more of the work and the effort that it's going to take.
And what am I giving up to do this?
What am I giving up to do it? And less about what am I gaining, though, by what you give up. And like you said, it doesn't have to be as tedious as people have made up in their minds.
No.
Yesterday, I remember going for a walk at the canal, and I felt, first of all, the heat, I felt like I was literally losing my mind, right? With the heat, the AC conked out in the car, and I felt like I was totally losing my mind. Then with the heat, like I couldn't focus. I just felt as if I was spiraling in that moment. And I said, okay, I don't really want to go on the beach. I don't want to do that. And I was like, okay, well, let me go to the canal, right? And you walk through and all of these bushes and crabs are running about and all of this stuff like that. And within that, it took me back to a time when I used to go camping with my adventure group. And we used to go camping when I was a little kid. And even within that moment, it just took me back to a more serene place.
Yeah.
And then you're getting out there, and the current in the water as you stand there that's moving through you, around you, about you. And everything else goes quiet. There were other people there. I couldn't hear a lot of that. You put your hand in the sand and you just watch your hand within that simple movement become one with nature, so to speak, right?
So that's meditation.
And that's what
meditation.
I'm just now realizing. Everything else went silent for me. And I actually saw myself like a little kid looking in the water, the clearness of the water, and playing with the sand and actually feeling the graininess of the sand and thinking about how marvelous nature is, about how these shells are formed, and I just literally that craziness that existed in my mind just a few minutes ago about feeling like I was about to lose it, it slowly, fluidly left me.
Yeah.
And I did that for a few hours, just out there and watching the breeze and the white-crowned pigeons fly, and just that quiet serenity. And as the sun came down, the temperature changed, and being so conscious of all of the different changes, but they're still not making a difference outside of the calmness that I'm connecting with. And leaving that, child, listen, after I left there, it could have exploded around me. I just was in that place of...
But you just perfectly described what meditation is.
You need it so bad.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter, like, okay, sit there and do Buddhist meditation and watch your thoughts sink, or, you know, more of a traditional yoga meditation and withdraw from the senses, or go run your hand through sand and pay attention to it. I don't care. You love your dog. I literally gave this as an exercise for one of my clients about a year and a half ago. Spend 5 minutes with your dog and play with your dog, and that's your meditation. And now she's become like a meditation teacher. No joke.
Wow.
Right? No joke.
Really?
It doesn't matter how you do it. The sense is, are you connecting? And it was, I mean, exactly what you said. Nothing else existed. You were purely present in the moment, and it wouldn't have mattered what happened afterwards.
Nope.
That is the point. That's the whole point, to create that space within our mind and to reconnect with nature or yourself. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. Yeah. And we're not creating the space, and we're always thinking about, like you said, what we're giving up instead. I don't have time for this. I have to whatever. I was talking with somebody. I was having just a really super interesting and very spiritual conversation with somebody yesterday. And I said to him at the beginning, I said, I don't know in what context I said, you know, I used to be so fun. Like I used to be like so much fun and, you know, such a partier and all this stuff. And I don't know what's happened. I just, like, Friday night comes and I'm like, you know, whatever. And he said two interesting things to me. The first thing he said, and we're having a really honest conversation. So if it sounds like it's not insulting, but if it sounds like
very real. Yeah.
And he said, well, you know, you had said that when we started talking, and the truth is, in some way it still bothers you, or you wouldn't have felt the need to say it, which was true. And he said, but B, you know, it's what you're giving up. Like, it's not that it's bad or wrong, but it's kind of, it's a facade of happiness. And what you're finding is a deeper place of contentment where you don't feel the need to put on that facade.
Yes.
And he was like, you're coming back to yourself. And I felt that over the past few years. And it's still an odd change, because as human beings, we're kind of programmed to see negative, to see what we're giving up or what we're letting go of. I would never trade it for where I am now, right. But it doesn't mean that I don't get nostalgic, like, oh, I used to be so fun. Like, I still say it.
But isn't that interesting what he said? So who you are now is basically what he's saying, what you were always meant to be.
100%.
And that is where the fun and happy comes from, and less about what we initially determined fun and happy to be, like going out there, hi, party, and that's not what it is. And that, just that, what you said, is what people are currently living right now.
Yeah.
Like, what their determination of what happy is what people have said happy is supposed to be. Like, every Friday night, you're the life of the party.
Yeah.
You're going out, something's posted on social media, there's a concert, you've got to be there. You're the it girl. You're that guy. When anything within you is saying, I would just love to be home with a pair of crazy socks on in my bed, just like,
yeah.
But that's not good enough for everyone else. When did it stop being okay, which is being who you want to be, where you want to be, and finding contentment in that?
And I think there's an evolution, right? Like, if 5-10 years ago you had sat me down and like, you should sit at home on Friday night, I mean, I would have been miserable,
right?
So that wouldn't have worked either. It's not just say go force yourself into doing something that doesn't feel right. But you know, I think about it, and I still have, like, you know, fun in my life. I went out all day Saturday to Rose Island on the boat. Now I'm probably going to go to Aura, which I never do on this coming Saturday, but because it sounds fun and we're having a girls' night and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I still do things, but what I've realized is, and this would have terrified me a few years ago, I don't need that much fun in my life. And I don't need nearly as much excitement in my life because I'm content. And it's such a hard thing to explain because it sounds so scary. What, you don't want to have fun? Like, what's wrong?
What kind of life is that to live?
Of course I do. But once in a while, but I don't need it to fulfill my life the way that what I do now fulfills my life. I just don't need it in the same way.
But that's the thing, Alexis. You have fun when you help people. You have fun when you indulge in yoga. That's a part of who you are, right?
Yeah.
So isn't being fulfilled fun? Like, what do we determine fun is? Like, in our mind, we think fun is, I think there's a predetermined conditioning as to what fun is supposed to look like. And then sometimes fun is something like, fun can be just eating popcorn and sipping some wine with your dogs on the couch. That's fun for some people.
Yeah.
So they can coexist. I want people to get that you don't necessarily have to give up one for the other.
No.
They can all exist within the same realm. It's about balance. And that's something that we are severely lacking within every element of our life, that balance. Yeah, a lot of us live crazy lives. Your schedule is like cutting your behind, right? Like, you've got appointments lined up and you've got work and you've got kids and you've got all this stuff that you've got to, and plus you got to squeeze in fun. You got to take them like bubble joy riding or whatever it is. But then, and that's fine there. But over here, there must be that time of putting your toes in the sand, or your meditation, or your cooking, or playing with your dog, or cutting on some Whitney Houston. I want to dance with some, whatever it is. Whatever it is, just try to achieve balance in your life, and don't let one side overwhelm the other. That's why yin and yang exists. And I think a lot of times we strive and we get that, okay, this part is becoming overwhelming. I have to start teeter-tottering back to the side to achieve balance. I think a lot of times that contentment that we so desperately want, it's right there. Just balance. So before we wrap, because we're about like 45 in, someone asked just now, how do you achieve building the conversations that you talked about with husband? They're having some challenges of been together a long time, but to be honest, there's never been that great understanding of how to go from that first level of communication, dating, and now trying to really get to depth where you understand who you're with. How have you achieved building those comfortable conversations that you have with your husband now? You're looking for some pointers on how to build that kind of communication and how to converse in a healthy way, open way, so that you can continue to build in each other. So what would be your pointers or some tips on how to achieve that?
It's a great question. And I think the biggest thing is how you approach it, and are you creating a space where somebody can be receptive? So for instance, when my husband and I started dating, if he did something that, maybe Matt had been like, why are you acting like such a jerk? Like, don't you, like, I just want to like, blah, like word vomit at him, right? How could the other person like possibly react? Or if you sit there and like, well, I'm unhappy, and like start pouting, like, okay, well, like, if you're invoking a feeling of frustration or annoyance or whatever in the other person, where is it possibly going to go, right? So to me, and I'll give you an example. I'm trying to think of, okay, can you give me an example of like just an issue that somebody might have, and then I'll tell you how you
deal with it. Okay. Like for me, in past relationships, I've had an issue with, I'm a person that is communicative. So if, as it happens, I want to talk about it. Like,
but what's it? Give me an example of it.
Okay. For instance, when we have an argument, we get angry. I would like to talk about whatever the issue is. For instance, let's just say we have date night. We agreed that we'll do date night, and you keep finding reasons to bow out of date night.
Okay.
And so it's making me feel like I'm not important.
Got it.
You know, you're not making time.
Got it.
But being a communicative person, and I want to talk about that, it's like, listen, I don't want to get into an argument. I don't want to deal with this right now. We'll talk about it later. So it's that reinforcement of not feeling like my feelings are being heard.
Yeah.
Or what I want is important.
So can we take the date night issue?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take that as the issue. Say that you have a standing date night every Friday, and for the last 4, they haven't happened, and they happen intermittently because something always comes up. So our natural inclination might be to be like, well, you know, you always have something better to do, right? Like every Friday rolls around, and every Friday, you know, you have something at work, or you this, or you that. Like, it makes me feel like crap. Right. That's kind of, is that not kind of how we would want to just like, maybe get a little more intense than that, right? So you might try something like saying something like this. Hey, babe, I wanted to talk to you. I want to have a really open and honest conversation. I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here for you to attack me. I just want to tell you kind of what I've been feeling lately and just see if, you know, we can have an open, honest conversation about it. Okay, what's going on? So right there, you've set a stage that's very...
Defenses come down instead of going up.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. If you tell people what they're doing wrong, then they're on the defense. If you tell people how you feel...
About what has happened.
Nobody can argue with your feelings.
Right.
Nobody can argue with your feelings. So you say, you know, I feel like we have had, you know, we said that we were going to have a standing date night, and, you know, the past few, we can probably agree that something's come up. You know, I don't know what's going on with you, or, you know, maybe in your life, and I want to hear about it in a second, but I really, just before you do that, I want to tell you how it makes me feel.
Right.
I'm not saying that it's your intention to hurt me, but the way it's making me feel is that you don't care. You know, I feel like we have this couple of hours a week set aside to just enjoy each other's company. And I get that you have so much going on. I get how busy you are. I get how stressed you are. And I'm not trying to place blame on you, but these few hours are really important to me. You know, so I want to hear what's going on with you, but, you know, is there a way we can make this work?
Right.
So right there, I've brought the person's defenses down. I've told them that I understand that they have a lot going on and where they might be coming from.
And that you respect that.
And that I respect that. So then they're like, okay, they're not beating me up. And then I'm asking to like co-create a solution. What can we do? Do you see how different that approach is to like, well, you didn't show up and this is that.
Right.
So all of a sudden this person's like, okay, I'm in a safe space. I can actually have a constructive conversation without being blamed, because the second we feel blamed, we shut down and we're on the defense. So I would say create the space, get the defenses down, say how you feel, and acknowledge the other person for what they might be feeling, and give them a space to respond, not to react, but to respond.
Right. So that's, in a way, how you can begin building the kinds of conversations that you need to have. And
you find that as you can have a constructive conversation, you can walk away feeling a little bit better about it, and like something has actually moved forward. It's like anything else, it just gets easier. And you realize, and then, you know, and then you're like me and you have a bad day, and my husband came home and he had been out all day, and, you know, then he brought the wrong pizza home, and I was like, and then immediately I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell, because I knew immediately as soon as it had come out of my mouth that that's not going to get us anywhere. I realize that now. So I instantly had to take responsibility for my action, but we don't have many of those anymore. Now we're really used to having open communication. So it gets easier, it gets less uncomfortable, and you become more trusting in the process, I'd say.
And that's awesome. I think a lot of times we have issues with apologizing as well. It's tough.
Yeah.
Right? It's tough to say. And I think it's really important once you have realized, because a lot of times we wait for the other person to point out that they were hurt by what we did or what we said or the way that we said it. We know a lot of times exactly what we've done and said to hurt somebody else, especially when you're in tune with your mate. You know what the buttons are, and you know when you've done it. And I think it's really important to not wait for someone else to have to point that out. You know what I mean? I think a part of those communications is being able to say, you know what, I realized and I do apologize for that. And I think a lot of times with doing that, you'll get it in return.
100%. And I want to add one more thing to what I said. Be very conscious of your body language when you're doing it, right? Say somebody then gives you an explanation, you like roll your eyes or sigh. Right there, defense back up, right?
Yeah.
Not more importantly, but with that, like, what is your intention? Is your intention to speak your word and get your point across and be done? Or is your intention really communication? If your intention is truly communication, then you want to hear what the other person has to say.
Right.
If you're trying to get your point across, I promise you the other person will pick up on that and you won't get the desired result. So you have to open yourself up to communication. Communication is not one way.
Yeah. I'll get into that in a sec. It always, when we're about out of time, then there's a flurry of stuff coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. The person says the biggest problem that they honestly have had, saying I'm sorry. Yeah. They saying that they're having some challenges with that. I've been open about that. It used to be a really difficult thing for me, and sometimes I still struggle with it because, and I'll be honest with you, I learned a lot of the behavior from my mother as well as my grandmother. Like I was telling the guys the other day on another show we had, my mother was the type of person, loving and all of that. She didn't necessarily show it in the regular ways that we would expect, but you knew. But she was also the kind of person that if she reversed her car over you, she would say, well, I mean, you shouldn't have been standing there.
Yeah.
You were in the way.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, oh, I should have been looking in the rear view. Oh, I'm sorry, I hurt you. It'll be like, well, I mean, you were standing there. What did you think were going to happen? You know, that's how she was. And I learned that behavior. And a lot of the times I realized that I did it too. It would justify, even though I knew within myself that this has happened. And there were ways that I could have sidestepped by doing something different. It still would be easier to justify those actions than just saying, I'm sorry. Right? So that's been a difficult pill to swallow. And I'm still learning the art of not just recognizing what you've done, acknowledging it to not just yourself, but the other person, and saying that I'm sorry, and trying not to repeat that same action to hurt someone else again and again.
Where is it? We have to ask ourselves, where is it coming from when you react in that way? I mean, one of it, you said, like, first I have to recognize I'm doing it. But once you recognize, where is it coming from? Is it from fear of the person hurting you? Is it from guilt? Is it from anger? Like, where is the action that you then need to apologize coming from?
Yeah. You know, and I guess that's a determinants to make, you know, because I hate when people just say I'm sorry and it's just to kind of woo woo woo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're sorry, not sorry, right?
I'd rather you keep that and an argument that, well, Corey and I'll have that. He'll say that. And then I will in turn say, why are you sorry? And he'll be like, so you're antagonizing me? And it's like, I had to get him to a place to understand it's not about antagonizing. I asked you why you're sorry because I want to make sure that we both get it. I want to know that you understand what it was that you did that upset me, right? And I want you to understand that I'm not just upset for no reason. There's a legitimate reason why I feel that way. And I feel like if I ask you and you truly understand, then there's less likelihood that we will go through this again. And, you know, it just opens the door for great communication as well, if we can talk about it. So a lot of times if someone asks you that, sometimes, I mean, be receptive to understanding where that's coming from as well. So, because sometimes maybe they want to understand that why they're upset is actually legitimate. And you want to know that it's not just in your mind why you're PO'd. You want the person to understand and acknowledge and take responsibility as well so that we both can have ownership.
Yeah.
You know, because ownership is a big deal. A lot of times people are definitely skirting that. Ownership within relationships. So the fact that yes, you had a bad day and you have every right to be in a crappy mood, but he didn't cause that, right? Maybe he attributed by bringing some stuff you didn't necessarily want to eat, but he didn't cause the bad day. So he doesn't deserve to be lashed. And the fact that you would say, okay, I'm sorry. I did have a bad day. You don't deserve that, you know, but this is what it is. And I'm sure he'll be able to acknowledge by saying, okay, yeah, you had a bad day. And I'm sorry, I did bring the wrong, you know what I mean? So it's both having ownership, and then you can go so much farther after that.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know, mine came out of anger and frustration, but what made me apologize was two things. One, that we've had this type of communication, so I understand what works,
right,
and I understand that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That was a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a response.
Right.
It was not an intelligent response. The other thing that I've realized, and this is something that, you know, my mom has always said to me, and she, you know, she instilled this idea that when we treat people a certain way, whether it's an intimate relationship or anything else, if we're treating people not well, or, and I don't mean like badly, I mean not well, right? Not in a good way. People can only take so much of that before they're done. And, you know, if I sit there and I, you know, throw my crap storm because I've had a bad day, how many times does my husband have to go through that before he's like, I don't really feel like putting up with this behavior. You've got to get it together.
Yeah.
And so, you know, better to say sorry than not say sorry. Even better to not do it in the first place,
Right.
which is still something I'm working on. I'm a very like passionate, fiery, reactive type of person. Yeah. And this has been training myself to pull back where I need to. It does not come naturally to me at all. And so I think, you know, we really have to stop and take a second and say, getting out of this, like, okay, I feel better in that split second. And then how has it impacted my relationship? Is that what I want? How much of this is that person going to put up with? And if the answer is not much, or it's hurting this person, or it's hurting the relationship, you've got to figure out really quickly, what is it you need to do? Is it that you need to like take a breath? Is it that you need to walk away? You know, you have to figure out some way to make it constructive, because people won't put up with bad behavior forever.
Not at all. I love these conversations. Absolutely. Always. It does something for you. And it as therapeutic for you as it is for the listener. So someone just said, awesome show. I just love these times when I can stop and really think about certain things. So you're welcome. It works wonders for us as well. Last but not least, because I know that we're out of time, I'd say that too, for people that get involved with people that are life coaches, psychologists, therapists, all of these things, note to self, that doesn't mean that we don't have our own issues. It does not.
I am not up here on my pedestal, don't you worry.
And you know, because a lot of times, you know, people assume because you have these accreditations, you know, to your name and all of this stuff and this time under your belt for studying and all of that, you know, you must have the grandest of relationships that come easy. It doesn't, you know, because a lot of times you're too close. You know, so a lot of things that are applicable for clientele and other people is not necessarily applicable within your own relationship. And you have to learn how to separate your own emotions from the things logically to put in, you know. So I don't want anybody to think that it comes easy for anybody. You know, it's living, it's learning, it's being in tune with each other. It's having the connection with yourself. First of all, it's so important to establish that connection with yourself. And then after you've done that, you're going to find that whether you seek it out or not, the connectivity with other people becomes easier. At least I found that to be the case.
100%.
So it goes back to what we say every single time. If you work hard and do the work on yourself, with yourself, and you get that connect with yourself, watch how much easier and better it's going to be with establishing those things with others. I can almost guarantee it.
Couldn't have said it better.
Absolutely. That does it for us. I'm so super excited about the next time that we get together. There are some other questions that have come in that I'm going to forward to you so that you can put some stuff together.
On it a little bit,
so you can put some stuff together, some questions that someone just asked me. If we can answer next time. So, so for the next show that we'll be a little bit, I mean, I think we're always pretty great with the preparedness. I think people love just getting it as it comes. and it always proves sort of something very
Yeah.
organic, and I love it.
Me too.
So I thank you. As always, it's been
Oh,
such
thank
a
you.
distinct pleasure having you on, and I look forward to our next thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. So that does it for us for today. I hope that you enjoyed the show. And for those of you that have commented, that have given, and have said that you openly have enjoyed, well, we have as well. And we look forward to you joining us again. It's 11 o'clock. This has been Love Jones on Global 99.5. Namaste.
Namaste.
You've been listening to Love Jones. Catch it weekday